Shalom, shalom. This is your brother Quadar of GMS Gulf Coast. And I'd like to start by giving infinite honor and praise to the Most High and His Son, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors are given up to the apostle elders of Great Millstone, men who have labored and suffered in this truth for over 30 years, making their lives and their bodies a living sacrifice. I also like to send a shalom to the bishops and the elders, as well as the heads of the camps of GMS. The shalom goes out to any of you Akim not named GMS, but walking one body, one spirit in Yahweh Shai, preaching and teaching 100% truth, as well as calling on the names Yahweh Yahweh Shai. Last but not least, the shalom goes out to the innumerable number, the 1/3 of the nation of Israel scattered throughout the four winds of planet Earth, north, south, east, and west, which consists of men, women, and children in that order. To you all, shalom. Lord willing to be edified. Let's jump right into it. Subject matter: hypocrites, narrative controllers. I want you to listen to the little clip here, and Lord willing, we're going to try to dissect it and make sense of it, make sense of the hypocrisy. And with that, let's go ahead and jump right in. Oh, I didn't want to do that.
U.S. is the strongest country in the world right now, militarily right now. You don't think so?
No, we're on our knees right now. Why do we even have an interest to be over there?
Well, for a few reasons. First of all, Zelensky is becoming more and more Western aligned, and when you have Vladimir Putin, who we can agree...
Zelensky is more and more Western aligned. Now, if you're not familiar with who Vladimir Zelensky is, he is the president of Ukraine. Mind you, Ukraine, Georgia, a lot of those Eastern European countries were part of the former Soviet Union. A part of the former Soviet Union, which collapsed during the Reagan administration. So that now that has come to pass, the collapse of the former Soviet Union, the United States has been making a play to make a move on the Eastern European countries to have a sideline view of Russia. Ultimately, they knew that Russia would be a strong body in that region years to come, So this was a hypocritical move by the United States to get the former Soviet Union to be dissolved. I believe President Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev back in '89, somewhere in the '80s. I remember that deal. Salakia, the deal was made that the Soviet Union would be dissolved. But now that was a document that was put in place in the mid-1800s called the Monroe Doctrine. And the United States is playing a very hypocritical role in all of this. So we're going to visit that. We're going to let the video play out first and foremost. And then we're going to do a little revisionist history and show you the hypocrisy of this man, of these devils, which they all are devils, but, these Western devils are something special.
He's a murderous dictator, right? When he invades his next-door neighbor, who's a sovereign country, and tries to grab that...
See that? Invades his next-door neighbor, which is a sovereign country. Now, mind you, this is a Western devil sitting up here speaking these talking points, controlling the narrative, you understand? Because a lot of people don't keep up with politics and history for the most part. So this goes right over your head. Most people are concerned about, taxes, whether they got a job, important things, quote unquote. So these things right here are left up to the parents of the so-called white folks, you know what I'm talking about? Because there's a scripture saying, he that is younger than I now has me in derision. He's ruling over us, you know what I'm talking about? It's talking about these childish ass white folks, you know what I'm talking about? Matter of fact, let me grab that real quick. It's like it. Okay, Job 31. Let's see. Let's write that real quick. See what you see. You have a bunch of lying children that's sitting here, making up stuff as they go along, changing moving the goalposts. Rules don't apply to them. This is Job chapter 30 and verse 9, verse 30 and verse 1. But now, they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to have set with the dogs of my flock. And it goes into these beastly behaving, the beastly behaviors of these so-called white folks. He that is younger than I, And when you get into the younger thing, he, the so-called white boy, he bursts up on the scene in Genesis. The twins that were born of Rebecca and Isaac, our forefather Isaac. Prior to that time, there were no so-called white people on the planet. So technically, we are older than Esau, Edom, but as a whole, but he came out first, you know what I'm talking about? So that's where that scripture going into. He that is younger than I now have me in derision. And that's so true because they ruling, they running stuff right now.
The strongest country in the world right now, militarily right now. You don't think so?
No, we're on our knees right now. Why do we even have an interest to be over there?
Well, for a few reasons. First of all, Zelensky is becoming more and more Western aligned, and when you have Vladimir Putin, who we can agree is a murderous dictator, right? When he invades his next door neighbor, who's a sovereign country, and tries to grab that land, not only does that violate international law, but it's just not a precedent that we want to.
Violates international law. Let's see if we can find. Okay, close all those.
According to National Archives, the Monroe Doctrine is the best-known U.S. policy toward the Western Hemisphere, buried in a routine annual message delivered to Congress by President James Monroe in December 1823. The doctrine warns European nations that the United States would not tolerate further colonization or puppet monarchs.
He said that what Putin is doing is a clear violation of international law. Okay. Let's see what they're doing by way of. Matter of fact, let's Google. What is NATO? NATO, an introduction to NATO that provides basic information on what NATO is, member countries, and alliances, key activities, and how it functions. Okay, how many countries? Okay, it says 31 members. North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the French, it says why doesn't Russia want Ukraine to join NATO? While public support for NATO membership has risen in Ukraine since 2014, the prospect countries to face opposition from Russia, which sees Ukraine potential NATO accession as a security threat. That's a violation of international law. That's a violation of international law. Point blank period. He just accused Putin of doing that by invading, quote unquote, Ukraine. Now let's get back to the Monroe Doctrine real quick. Let's go back to the Monroe Doctrine. Let's Google that.
According to National Archives, the Monroe Doctrine was articulated in President James Monroe's 7th annual message to Congress on December 2, 1823. The European powers, according to Monroe, were obligated to respect the Western Hemisphere as the United States' sphere of interest.
See that? The European powers, according to the Monroe Doctrine, were obligated to respect the Western Hemisphere as the United States' sphere of interest. See? I mean, y'all remember when Russia came over to the aid of the Venezuelans? Cuba, remember the Cuban crisis when what was his name during the Kennedy administration? They was supposedly gonna have that, supposedly stockpiling nuclear warheads right there in Cuba. There's been plenty of incidents throughout the history of the U.S. Talking about where they have flexed their muscles because Russia was on the wrong side of the street. Now you have the inception of NATO, which guess what? Is on the wrong side of the street. But now you have these Edomites over here controlling the narrative, what I'm talking about? Saying that one Edomite is out of place while, they're not mentioning the things that they're going off on, what I'm talking about? So that's a clear violation of international law that NATO is actually is trying to induct the Ukrainian government into a new member. Monroe made 4 basic points. The United States would not interfere in European affairs. Ain't that Eastern Europe? That's a violation right there. The United States would not interfere in European affairs. 2, the United States recognized and would not interfere with existing colonies in the Americas. Verse 3, it says the Western Hemisphere was closed to future colonization. We read that let's go real quick. Let's go back up there where it says that the European powers, according to the Monroe Doctrine, were obligated to respect the Western Hemisphere as the United States sphere of interest. 3, the Western Hemisphere was closed to future colonization, and if any European power tried to interfere with any nation. Let's tap on this real quick. Let's see if we go any further. Well, let's go right here. Let's go to the 3 main points, see what they say. But that's been made clear that the United States is being a hypocrite about its dealings with laws and doctrines that they have set forth. You know what I'm talking about? They're violating their own rules, their own rules and regulations. Now, let's see. I was gonna go any further on that, but I want to go somewhere else with it. Let me see. Okay, let's click on right here, National Archives. Let's see what they say about the Monroe Doctrine. Let's see what this says. Articulated. Not now. Get out of the way. Monroe Doctrine was articulated in President James Monroe's 7th annual message to Congress, December of 1823, and 1776 to. So that's about what? 1776. 24 years plus 3 is what? 57 years after the United States became a so-called country. 57 years. President James, okay. The European powers, according to the Monroe, were obligated to respect Western Hemisphere as the United States sphere of interest. Let's see. President James Monroe, 1823. Okay, we just read that. Okay. Understandably, the United States has always taken a particular interest in its closest neighbors, the nations of the Western Hemisphere. Equally, understandably, expressions of this concern have not always been favorably regarded by other American nations. The Monroe Doctrine is the best known U.S. policy towards the Western Hemisphere, buried in a routine annual message. Okay, you keep going over that. Monroe Doctrine was invoked in 1865 when the United States government exerted diplomatic and military pressure in support of the Mexican president Benito Juarez. This support enabled Juarez to lead a successful revolt against the Emperor Maximilian, who had been placed on the throne by the French government. Hence, that goes back to, United States always has had a problem with the French. When they had that war on terrorism, the French was not on board with being an ally, so they stopped calling French fries and they call them freedom fries. And now you have Macron, who's put in the application, quote unquote, that's just me putting that in there, to join the BRICS nation. So there's always been some type of headbutting going on between the French and the so-called Americans. And it goes all the way back to this. It says this enabled Juarez to lead a successful revolt against the Emperor Maximilian, who had been placed on the throne by the French government. So when you read up on these devils, you know what I'm saying, you see they've been fighting one another forever. So it was always it was inevitable that they would one day just, it's all going to come to an head. This has all been orchestrated by the Lord, mind you. You know what I'm talking about? Anyway, almost 40 years later, in 1904, European creditors of a number of Latin American countries threatened armed intervention to collect debts. President Theodore Roosevelt promptly proclaimed the right of the United States to exercise an international police power. See that? To curb such chronic wrongdoing in his so-called Roosevelt corollary or extension to the Monroe Doctrine. While the Monroe Doctrine message was designed to keep European powers out of the Western Hemisphere, see that? Roosevelt would strengthen his meaning to justify sending the United States into other countries of the Western Hemisphere. As a result, United States Marines were sent into Santiago Domingo in 1904, Nicaragua in 1911, and Haiti in 1915, ostensibly to keep the Europeans out. Other Latin American nations view these interventions with misgivings, and relations between the great, I can't pronounce that, of the North and its southern neighbors remain strained for many years. Thus, that's why you have problems with Cuba and Nicaragua now. They've always, United States, when you go into the history of these countries, dealing with Central America and all in South America, there's always been a strained relationship, I'm talking about. Because these devils on this side right here want to keep everything to themselves. Now let's go to NATO. So we're going to check into NATO real quick. Because
according to History
devil,
State Government,
okay.
The North Atlantic Treaty Organization was created in 1949 by the United States, Canada, and several Western European nations to provide collective security against the Soviet Union.
See, it was already a setup. After the Second World War, they knew that the Russians would be a problem. Mind you, in the Second World War, I believe his name was Stalin. Stalin was the president of Russia during his time. He was one of the allies that helped bring down the Nazi regime. You know what I'm talking about? If my history memory served me correctly, the Germans got snowed down in the war with the Russians, and that ultimately curbed things for them. And then they stormed the beaches of Normandy, and the United States and the French and the British, they was all waiting on them. So when it was all said and done, they still had problems between themselves. That's why NATO was formed, to ultimately keep out Russia. And I'm just putting that all, I'm just a quick rundown. And I'm just going out on a limb saying what I'm saying. And the plan was to always move on Russia. That's why you had the Cold War for so many years. Notice cold, but it was a war nevertheless. And they got Mikhail Gorbachev and Reagan together to bring down that wall in Berlin. It was in Berlin, yeah, in Berlin. Was it Berlin? The Berlin Wall? I believe it was. Correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, and once that was done, that was the dissolve of the Soviet Union. Now they have weakened and fractured the Soviet Union. The Western powers, headed by the United States and Canada, was going to make a move to bring in those European countries on that side. But you first had to break the stronghold of the Soviet Union, make them weak, fracture them, and then give incentives for those smaller countries within the Soviet Union, like Jordan, Georgia, Ukraine, give them incentives to come on board with you. And that'll put the United States and these Western powers right at the doorstep of the Russians. But it was a clear violation of what? The Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine. That's why I say these are hypocrites in narrative. They try to control the narrative. And it goes over the heads of a lot of Jakes. Jake is really not up on history. Jake is into a lot of foolishness and folliness. And so, Jake don't understand these type of conversations. And I'm just giving a real quick rundown of it, I'm not going real in depth, but that's the basis of it, they trying to make chess moves to be backdoor at one another, I can't think of the prime minister or the Russian president during the Kennedy administration, but you had the Bay of Pigs, and you had that Russian scare where they were going to put those nuclear weapons out there on the island of Cuba. And I think it was during the, I want to say it was during the Trump administration. You had the Russian battleships over here to bag up Venezuela. It was all over, So there's always been intrusion. So this is just a get back move at Russia for what they had done as far as moving to help the weaker nations over here. The United States is just making a play. But as they are doing so, they're being a hypocrite about it. You understand? They're being a hypocrite about it. Okay, let's see. What happened before NATO? Let's see. The Treaty of Brussels was a mutual defense treaty against the Soviet threat. At the start of the Cold War, it was signed on the 17th of March of 1948. Ain't that convenient? Some old folks had got a piece of land in 48. So these are not coincidences. You know what I'm talking about? Those ish people had got our land signed into their possession, made the state of Israel in 48. I want to say it was February. It might have been in March. Anyway, it was signed on March the 17th of 1948 by Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, France, and the United Kingdom, and was the prosecutor of NATO. So you can see all of them there in the blue. Look at that. And the red represents the former Soviet Union. What countries are in NATO as of, let's see, what countries want to join NATO? Let's look at that real quick. Since 49, NATO membership increased from 12 to 32 countries, though 10 round, Sweden became the latest to join the alliance, the 7th of March 7th of 2024. 3 partner countries have declared their aspirations to NATO membership. Look at that, Georgia and Ukraine, which were of what? The former Soviet Union. You see? See, but they're not putting the dirt out on them. And when I say them, the United States, they're not putting that dirt out on them, that they're making the same moves. They're being hypocrites. But when you have a people that are asleep, they fat, they lazy, they don't study, they don't read, you feel what I'm saying? You can tell them anything. And that's what he's doing out there. He's controlling the narrative. But these so-called white folks, they're waking up because they're pissed off that their slice of pie is being, you know what I'm saying, is being leveraged. And they're being put on the chopping blocks right along with these undesirables, you so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. They're waking up to the fact that that the elites of their people are carting them off, writing them off as peasants, and putting them in the same basket as you so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. Their privileges are waning, so they're starting to stand up and recognize and starting to make a fuss about this. But meanwhile, the people who really need to take heed to this, they still asleep, man. They still asleep. Anyway, so that was the point. You see that Georgia and Ukraine 7 days ago. Now let's get back to that video real quick.
Militarily right now. You don't think so?
No, we're on our knees right now. Why do we even have an interest to be over there?
Well, for a few reasons. First of all, Zelensky is becoming more and more Western aligned, and when you have Vladimir Putin,
Zelensky is the president of Ukraine. He's becoming more and more Western aligned. We just read that he made a move to join NATO.
who we can agree is a murderous dictator, right? When he invades his next door neighbor, who's a sovereign country, and tries to grab that land, not only does that violate international...
Now, why is he trying to grab that land? Because the United States, NATO is the United States. It's just under another name. You understand what I'm saying? But they're not putting that out there. That's just a cover. NATO is a cover for the United States. That's all that is. You think of NATO, you think of the alliance, but it's headed by the United States now. It was headed by the United States. It was put together by the United States and Canada. You got to look, you got to think into what's actually happening. So he's saying that Vladimir Putin is a dictator and he's trying to invade his neighbors. But at the same time, the United States is making a move on him so that they can have backdoor access to Russia.
law, but it's just not a precedent that we want to set. If we set that precedent, what if Xi Jinping wants to invade Taiwan and then...
Oh, I know. I mean, all of these scenarios are up in the air. So, but let me ask you this: Do you know about when the fall of the Soviet Union happened?
Yeah,
when we agreed
Fall of the Soviet Union.
Not to expand NATO east towards the Russian border.
What you're talking about is James Baker and Gorbachev making an agreement that they wouldn't expand 1 inch eastward, but this wasn't a formal agreement. This was just a passing conversation about...
It wasn't no formal agreement. It was just a conversation. In other words, they talked about it, but it wasn't no paper sign or nothing. And to his credit, Reagan and Gorbachev shook hands. But all the deal making is made behind closed doors. When the lawyer, the judge, the prosecutor, when they all come into the courtroom, that's for show. That's for the people that's sitting out there in the courtroom. The deal has already been made. So they just going to act it out in front of you. You follow what I'm saying? You know what it is, 2 Corinthians 2:11. Matter of fact, I'm going to grab that real quick. Salakia. These are just games that these devils play, you know what I'm talking about, And he put it out there. He just told you, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, that was just formal. That wasn't, you know what I'm talking about. In other words, just playing down their involvement in this, you know what I'm saying? And that was real smooth now. That was real smooth how he did that. Hey, but that's typical devil. This is 2 Corinthians 2:11. It reads, "Least Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices." You follow what I'm saying? So you got to be wary. You got to listen. You got to catch it when they start being slick,
Conversation about military expansion. And if you want to talk about breaking deals, Vladimir Putin broke the Budapest Memorandum, which said that if Ukraine gives up their nukes, then Russia will never invade. U.S. is the strong.
The Budapest deal. That has nothing to do with the United States. You follow what I'm saying? Nothing. Why are you over there? Just like he said, why are we over there? And the only answer he can give you was that, listen to this.
Strongest country in the world right now, militarily right now. You don't think so?
No, we're on our knees right now. Why do we even have an interest to be over there?
Well, for a few reasons. First of all, Zelensky is becoming more and more Western aligned, and when you have Vladimir Putin, who we can agree is.
He didn't go into nothing. All he said was Zelensky was in line with the West. And then he went to talking about Putin being a dictator and this. He didn't get no reasons. See, you see what I'm saying? See how quick that was? That slickness, that, you got to pay attention to these devils. Anyway. Anyway, got to pay attention to these devils. This is Job 20:4, and it says, knowest thou not this of old, since man was placed upon earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment. You follow what I'm saying? They didn't got to where they just saying things now. But to the audience in which should be paying attention to this, they're not picking up on it. You see it with a number of so-called white folks out there. You dig what I'm saying? It says, though his excellently mount up to the heavens, and his head reaches unto the clouds, yea, he shall perish forever like his own dung. They which have seen him shall say, where is he? See, they're at the point of annihilation. The Lord is going to get rid of these folks, man. The Lord is going to get rid of these folks. He shall fly away as a dream and shall not be found. Yea, he shall be chased away as a vision of the night. The eye also which saw him shall see him no more, neither shall his place any more behold him. His children shall seek to please the poor, and his hands shall restore their goods. That's why you're seeing some videos now popping up, you know what I'm saying, where they on TikTok, and that's the thing. They talking about banning TikTok. They done already passed the bill in the Senate, you know what I'm saying? Because truths are coming out. These rednecks are mad with one another. Now they, you know how you have a little tattletale sibling? They keep the secrets until you done reneged on them. Now they gonna tell everything. You know what I'm talking about? So now they telling you that so-called blacks are the Lord's people, and too much truth coming out. I mean, don't get me wrong, they still devils, but they breaking code, they breaking rank, and they start talking now. You know what I'm talking about? They starting to talk. Let me see. What's that scripture? I think it's Psalms, where it says that their tongues should fall upon them. It says, their tongue shall fall upon themselves. What it is? Is it 64 or 58? Let me see. His own tongue shall fall upon themselves. Let's see. Let me see. Hold up. Let me grab it. Because that's what's happening. And so they talking about getting rid of the internet. I mean, not the internet, but I know it's in the book of Psalms.
According to Bible.com, Psalm
64. It's Psalm 64 and 8. Yeah, okay, this is Psalms chapter 64, and I'm going to get to it. It says, all this good, though, be honest with you. But we're going to get straight to the point. It says, this is Psalm 64 and 8, and it says, so that they shall make their own tongues fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. We just read that, man. This man finna be held accountable for his actions, man. So long he been ripping and running across the planet. You know, I'm talking about an old vagabond running from justice, man. But he finna get caught up. The Lord finna catch him up, man. His days are running free, loose, and wild, making all these different laws to ensnare and trap us, it's all finna work against them now. It's all working against them. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, you see these devils, they starting to tell on one another. They starting to tell on one another. Anyway, a hypocrite. And we're gonna close out with that. A hypocrite.
According to vocabulary.com, the word hypocrite is rooted in the Greek word Hippocrates, which means stage actor, pretender, dissembler. So think of a hypocrite as a person who pretends to be a certain way, but really acts and believes the total opposite.
And that's the so-called white man. He's so slick and smooth, and he wears suits, shave his face, to my old cave maggot, knuckle dragging cave maggot, and clean himself up and pretending to be civilized. You understand what I'm saying? But yet, all in all this stuff coming out about him. To my everything is coming out. Everything you done in the dark coming to the light. You feel what I'm saying? Everything that he's been doing in the dark is coming to the light. We're gonna grab that as well.
Luke chapter 12 verse 3. According to Quora, Jesus Christ was speaking. Luke chapter 12.
His name is not Jesus Christ. We ain't want to hear no more of that J. Christ stuff. Let's get it real quick. And we know that the Lord and Savior was speaking about Israelites. But hey, this jacket gonna be put on the people who want to claim that they are the Israelites. You know what I'm talking about? These so-called white folks. This is Luke 12 and 3. It says, "Therefore, whatsoever ye have spoken in darkness shall be heard in the light." See that? All these GA summits and, all these secret meetings and whatnot. You got the WHO and the WEF, and these are non-elected officials who's running the world, man. And these other rednecks, they getting tired of being strung along. And they seeing slowly but surely that, all that was promised to them, things going on, being passed on to their sons and their sons' sons, all that's over with. When they collapse this damn dollar, man, that's going to be over with. And so they mad. Shit. Anyway, Luke 12 and 3, he said, "Therefore whatsoever ye have spoken in the darkness shall be heard in the light, and that which ye have spoken in the ear and closet shall be proclaimed upon the housetops." Yeah. The little secret meetings when all these hot mics they catching these so-called world leaders on, what I'm talking about? Hot mics. That's the people who round them, that handlers and whatnot doing that. That's what that is. The handlers are doing that. Anyway, Lord, when it was edifying, I didn't want to carry on too long, Oh yeah, I want to grab that hypocrite. But I grabbed a hypocrite. Lord willing, it was edifying. I'm going to close out by giving infinite honor and praise to the Most High and His Son, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua. Double honors to the elder apostles, great millstone. And with that, shalom.